Nirvana's music has stood the test of time and become a standard in the experience with rock music. When you get into rock music, you are bound to go through a Nirvana phase, and for some, the phase never ends. As of the making of this video, it has been over 30 years since it all ended in 1994. So it's understandable if people forget that Nirvana's time was very short, at least their time in the spotlight, 1991 through 1994. Just 3 short years together with Dave Grohl. This is part of my 1994 video series discussing the last year of Kurt Cobain's life. This is part 2, Kurt and Dave. I want to talk about their relationship and musical collaboration, and later talk about what could have been if Nirvana had continued and if Dave would have become more involved in the songwriting process, or if he would have moved on to his own project. Hey, my name's Dave, and this is my channel, Sing Like Kurt. If you like this video, check out some of my other videos and consider subscribing. I'd also like to thank all of you who liked my previous video and encouraged me to make more. Thanks. Around Halloween 1990, Dave Grohl moved into Kurt Cobain's one-bedroom apartment at 114 North Pear Street in Olympia, Washington. Though the 21-year-old drummer had spent the previous 2 weeks sharing a cramped tour bus and scuzzy hotel rooms with Cobain on a 6-date Nirvana tour in the UK, nothing had prepared him for the squalor in which his new roommate lived at home. It was chaos, Grohl recalling a dirty, foul-smelling, mold-covered apartment littered with rotting takeout food, beer cans. That was Cobain's bachelor life. You walked in, and there were sculptures, paintings, turtles, medical books, and Leonard Cohen records. It was like, this is Kurt. Grohl spent the next 8 weeks sleeping on Cobain's couch. Homesick and lonely, Dave said in an interview, Olympia, Washington is depressing enough, and I was living with this person that I didn't know. The drummer would wake up each day as the sun was going down, travel to nearby Tacoma to rehearse in a barn with Cobain and Chris Novoselic, then set up all night playing acoustic guitar quietly so as to not wake the sleeping Cobain. So Dave lived with Cobain for 6 months, sleeping on his couch, and then they went in, recorded Nevermind. After Nevermind, everything changed, including Kurt's relationship with Dave. And when Courtney Love entered the picture, the drama didn't stop. Dave Grohl was one of 8 people to attend the wedding ceremony, even posing with Love and Kurt Cobain for photos. Chris Novoselic refused to attend the ceremony because of the couple's drug use and his belief that Love was a terrible influence on Kurt. To make matters worse, in 1992, Kurt redrafted Nirvana's publishing contract, which had previously stated that all royalties would be split evenly between the 3 band members. Under the terms of the new agreement, Cobain would receive the majority share of the earnings. To the shock of Chris and Dave, Cobain also insisted that the new contract be applied retroactively to the September 1991 release of Nevermind, meaning that Novoselic and Grohl now effectively owed Kurt money from the album sales. Bitter arguments ensued, and for a few anxious weeks, no one was entirely sure whether Nirvana actually still existed as a band. Dave Grohl said, looking back, a really strange time. There was tension, there was weirdness. This whole situation has the foul smell of Courtney Love all over it. Kurt always seemed embarrassed of the money and fame, but here is a clear contradiction of that. Cobain could have done this to appease Courtney or even to impress her. But this, to me, is the death of Nirvana as bandmates. And that's really sad. Kurt was the one who decided that they would get a second guitarist and just brought Pat Smear into the band without any say-so from the others, and then mainly hung around with Pat from that point on. This could have been Kurt trying to reconnect with a band member and knew that he had ruined it with Chris and Dave. But of course, Chris and Dave wouldn't leave the band. They were the biggest band in the world at the time, and they were still making money, touring, making music videos, and trying to continue as a band. In 1994, the band started off in the studio, working on new material, and then embarked on a European tour. So how was Kurt and Dave's relationship at this point? According to some sources, Kurt was not pleased with Dave. It's been widely publicized that Courtney Love and Dave Grohl had feuded with one another over the past 30 years. And at that time, in 1994, it was no different. And Courtney had a huge influence on Kurt. And drugs were driving the band apart. Dave Grohl has talked about how within the Nirvana inner circle, there were those that used drugs and those that didn't. And because he didn't use drugs, he was pushed out of the inner circle and ultimately out of Kurt's personal life. Dave said, "I didn't realize that he was getting effed up until Saturday Night Live, Nirvana's first appearance on the hit TV show on January 11th, 1992, the same day that Nevermind hit the top Billboard 200 chart." Dave said, "It was because I was stupid and just couldn't pick out something like that. I'm naive and didn't want to believe it. I remember walking into their hotel room and for the first time really realizing that these two are effed up. They were just nodding out in bed, just wasted. It was disgusting and gross. It doesn't make me angry at them. It makes me angry that they would be so pathetic as to do something like that. I think it's pathetic for someone to do something to make themselves that functionless and drooling like a baby." Grohl recalled during a 2001 interview with Vulture that Cobain considered replacing him on drums. Grohl recalled overhearing a conversation when the band were driving to Los Angeles to start rehearsals for the In Utero tour. "I was sitting a few rows ahead of Kurt and Chris, and I could hear Kurt saying, 'I think we need a drummer that's more rudimental.' Along the lines of Dan Peters, who was the guy Nirvana almost hired when Dave joined the band. I was really upset because I thought things were okay. I talked to Chris and I said, 'Is that really what you guys want to do? Because if that's what you want, maybe just let me know and we can call it a day.' I eventually talked to Kurt about it and he said, 'No, that's not what we want to do. I just felt like it's up to you guys what kind of drummer you really want.' And they decided I should stay." Grohl also stated that Nirvana were on shaky ground for a lot of reasons. Grohl reflected on the lasting impact of Cobain's death. He said, "I'll go back to when Kurt died. The next morning I woke up and I realized he wasn't coming back. And I was lucky to have another day. I sat and made a cup of coffee. I can have a cup of coffee today, but he can't. I got in my car to take a drive. Beautiful day, sun's out. I'm experiencing this. He can't. It was then I realized no matter how good or bad a day, I wanted to be alive to experience it. But what if Kurt had lived? Could Dave have become a bigger part of the songwriting process with Nirvana? Could Kurt and Dave become another Lennon and McCartney? Back in 1992, Dave Grohl hit the studio and recorded some demos for a side project he wanted to keep anonymous. Feeling pretty good about his work, he decided to play them for Kurt Cobain, which led to an unexpected reaction. Those demos would eventually be polished up and included on the Foo Fighters' first EP. In 1992, Grohl recorded demo tapes with the idea of starting a side project. Kurt got wind of it and was curious to hear what Dave had come up with. In some bands, the lead singer might have been offended by this, but Kurt's reaction was different. Dave said, "Kurt heard the music and kissed me on the face while he was in a bath. He was so excited. He was like, 'I heard you recorded some stuff.' And I was like, 'Yeah.' And he was like, 'Let me hear it.' I was too afraid to be in the same room as he listened to it." Kurt's enthusiasm was enough to keep Grohl interested in songwriting. There was even talk of turning some of those songs into Nirvana tracks. Tracks like Alone and Easy Target, Big Me, and Exhausted eventually became part of the Foo Fighters' debut EP. Kurt was excited about the songs Dave recorded, and one of Dave's recordings was used for the Heart-Shaped Box single, a song called Marigold, where Dave had written the lyrics and played guitar and sang on the track. So clearly Nirvana as a band was open to having Dave use his material for Nirvana releases. It's pure speculation, but I'd like to think they would have collaborated more if Kurt had lived and Nirvana had continued. Maybe co-writing songs, maybe adding these songs to B-sides or live performances. But I also think Dave was destined to front his own band. On the negative side, Kurt might not have wanted to release the reins of the main creative force behind Nirvana. When asked about writing the song Scentless Apprentice, Kurt described hearing Dave's riff and thinking it was kind of boneheaded. In the interview, Kurt begins by stating that Dave came up with the drum part, and is corrected by Chris, who states Dave also came up with the riff. That's when Kurt adds the part that he thought the riff was kind of boneheaded, but that they worked on it and it came out great. On their last tour, Kurt and Dave drove in separate buses and barely spoke to one another. It's a sad ending to a relationship of two people who experienced a whirlwind together, and then it ends in such a violent, sudden act. Dave has stayed classy about his relationship with Kurt at the end. There's some stories or people commenting that Kurt was jealous of Dave because Dave had his life together and was a positive person with a healthy relationship with his mother and didn't rely on drugs. Kurt was the opposite, more of the tortured artist type. Personally, I wish Dave had been able to reach Kurt. It seems their relationship was broken at some point, and Kurt was submerged more and more into the drug scene, and Dave wasn't able to pull him back. Maybe Dave thought of himself as just one of the many drummers of Nirvana and didn't think it was his place to say anything. But Dave has done great for himself, and it's hard not to like the guy. And I've always wished the best for Dave. But that'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching. The next video I want to work on is the relationship between Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic.